to Breaking the Grade. For as long as she can remember, Susan Gold has been the kid whisperer. She gets kids, and they get that she gets them. A match made in heaven, especially since she founded her school in 2010. But that didn't mean that Susan's peers when she was in school got her all the time. In fact, her middle school years were packed with some bad days and some bullying. By listening to our show today about this excellent educator and equally excellent person, you'll learn about how Susan made it through those tough years and then absolutely had a confidence-building 4 years in high school and well beyond. How her success continued in college, grad school, and as a teacher by joining committees and organizations to support young people. How and why Susan decided to start Feynman School outside of Washington, D.C., and how today this school is changing students' lives one subject and day at a time. Breakers band together as we talk to this educator and entrepreneur, Susan Gold. Susan, John, welcome.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Josh. Hey, Susan.
Hi.
How are we doing?
We
Doing
are
great.
doing great. Mm-hmm.
Good. It's a nice day. It's a Thursday. People will watch this for many years to come, but it happens to also be opening day, and so that's a pretty good day for everybody.
I heard this is the first opening day where all the teams are going to play on the same day, which
Oh,
is pretty
wow.
cool in terms of how that's evolved. So I'm fired up here, and it's really great to meet you, Susan, the kid whisperer. I can't wait to get into this, John.
That's it. You know, John and I have done this for long enough that he knows exactly where my mind is going, and we're going straight to the kid whisperer. So, Susan,
All
talk
right.
about it. Tell us about it.
So,
How?
back in the day when you could wander away from your parents and not worry about being, captured or whatever, my parents would always know where to find me. I'd always be by the nearest baby carriage, trying to help the parents give the baby a bottle or whatever it was. And I've just had that knack. I volunteered at my Sunday school throughout high school, and I've just always been able to connect with children at their level. And they really respond to the fact that I value them. I respect what they have to say, even the youngest of our children here at school. And I get down at their level. I look into their eyes. And I really want to know what they want to know about. And I feel that they understand that I have this deep connection to them.
Wow,
John.
that's powerful, and sort of that sense of empathy and that sense of need and that sense of service stays with you, right? And
Yes.
I think that carrying it fast forward, developing that's almost a skill, right? It was kind of a knack in a sense early on, but then it's kind of developed into a skill. How did that sort of develop as you got into your elementary, middle, and high school years? I know there's some really interesting stories there as well.
Yes. So I loved my elementary school. I had some really good friendships there. But then, things kind of turned for the worse when I got into middle school. The classes were huge. The kids were mean. The teachers didn't really get to know you. And so I just would go home and say, it's a chaotic situation. I'm not learning anything. I don't really have any friends. And so then I was lucky enough to be in a position where my parents said, okay, well, you have a choice for next year. Where would you like to go? You can either go to the very large public middle school. That's excellent. Or, I knew about half a dozen girls who were at a local, very well-known, very well-respected private high school. And I was lucky enough to get into that high school. And one of my friends wrote me a lovely letter right before entering my freshman year. And that really made a difference. And it's like welcoming me, saying, this is going to be a great move for you. And I developed these close relationships with my teachers there. And it was really, I think maybe my class that year was a phenomenon because all of us got along. Did we all get along outside of school and party with each other outside of school? No. But in school, we all got along. There was not one lick of bullying going on. My teachers actually cared about me. They got to know me. Our art teacher would come over for dinner. And so it just changed my view of what education should be like. And then I went to McGill University in Montreal. So I left the country, and I just
Nice.
had this amazing experience that was so diverse. And that kind of opened up my eyes to different cultural experiences, appreciation for people from different cultural backgrounds, religious backgrounds. And again, every class was taught from the Canadian perspective. So it gave me sort of a growth mindset of understanding people from different perspectives, which I think has helped me
Hmm.
immensely in my teaching. And then
Yeah.
I went to grad school. So I majored in sociology, which has to do with people. And then I went to grad school and majored in child development and early childhood education. At the time, it was Wheelock College. It has since been bought by Boston University. And there, I thought maybe I'd want to go into some policy work, but I quickly learned after working at the State Department in Boston that that was not for me. I felt like the movement was too slow for me to get anything done, and so then I decided I really love kids. Let me go into teaching. And
Yeah.
so I taught for many years in our public school system. And then I was always feeling like I was confined by the rigid curriculum. And I'm a very creative thinker, critical and creative thinker, which I promote at my school. And there were kids who would think outside the box. And I would do as much as I could for those particular group of students within my very large class, but they weren't learning something new every single day like they deserved, like every learner deserves. So once I had and I was always involved in things outside the classroom. You know, I was the team leader, or I was part of the character education committee. I was even part of the Gaithersburg City Character Counts steering committee because I just wanted to do more, to have more of an impact on my community. So I've always kind of been this doer who just didn't go in and do my job from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4.
Yeah.
Teaching
I
was
think
more
it's
of,
it's it's interesting. It's
mhm,
interesting to point out, and we don't necessarily have to go into names,
mhm,
but I believe that all three of us are um, graduates of private schools in the Washington D.C. area. I bumped around um, growing up. I went to two elementary schools, one middle school, and then ended up graduating from Bullis Prep
mhm,
School. And it was the best 2 years of my education because I finally, found teachers that I was able to relate to and learn best from.
mhm.
And I can still remember their names, and I can still
Yes.
remember some of the, Mr. Hibbs when he taught 1984. It changed my life.
Mhm.
I mean, I can still go back and read that book. And so it sounds like you began to have that experience. John went to prep, right?
Mhm.
And John, did you have some Georgetown prep? I should point out.
Yeah, so you
Did
were
you
at
have
prep
some of
when
those
I was at
experiences?
Holton. That's so funny because we graduated the same year.
So there are so many cosmic connections here, Susan. So
Mhm,
yes, I went to a public school outside of Philadelphia growing up,
mhm,
and so many of your stories I can relate to. They really resonate. And my father was transferred my junior year of high school
oh, wow.
down to Washington D.C., and we moved to Potomac off of River Road,
Mhm.
and they put me in this crazy place called Georgetown Prep. I had never worn a belt. I never wore a tie. Never had a jacket on. Literally walked in there, and it's so interesting because when I got into Georgetown Prep, it was a welcoming feeling, but I was so mad that my parents moved me for like 6 months.
Mhm.
What'd you do? Nothing. Who'd you meet? No one. Did you have fun? No. What happened? I sat alone at lunch. And it was crazy because like 6 weeks in, they went to the parent teacher conference and they were so nervous and they were like, how's John doing? And they're like, he's great. He has so many friends. He's on the basketball team. He's really, and they came home and they were so mad at me. But the message here is I think relationships.
Mhm,
In the case of Georgetown Prep, what really impacted me was the Jesuit philosophy of men for others. Very
mhm,
quickly got into a model of service driven, our
mm,
Christian service project, where I went every Sunday morning or Saturday morning to Anacostia to a food
mm,
kitchen and really learned about giving back and being selfless and not looking around and seeing who was looking and watching me be of service. So I really relate to models that institutionalize service and purpose and
mhm.
being committed to the world at large. And I have to say, maybe there's a connection here. My best friend who took me in when I got to Georgetown Prep because his parents worked for the World Bank,
Mm-hmm.
was Carlos Bori, who went to McGill University.
Oh,
So he
very
went to
nice.
McGill, and I don't know if you've
There
ever
you go.
met him, but how connected is that?
Yes.
Potomac, McGill,
Yes.
private school, graduating in 1988, and Holton Arms.
Right.
A couple
Right.
dances, couple
Yeah,
social
that's
events.
right. Yeah. So our motto is still is find a way or make one. So I guess I've taken that to heart.
Absolutely.
And and I think so. I agree with you, John, about relationships, but I also think, and I know certainly in my case, it was finding the right school for me.
Mm-hmm.
And Susan, let's talk a little bit about how Feynman, and I've just been amazed. I've walked through the halls, and I've gotten to talk to parents, and I've gotten to talk to teachers, and I don't know how many schools and principals I've met, in the thousands, over the 2 decades that I've done education. There is something very, very unique about Feynman and very special. And I truly mean that. And maybe it is find a way or make one.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think and now is beginning to resonate, is that the kids who get to go to Feynman are finding their way, and they're able to make it because of the community and the classrooms that you have. Is that, am I going way off
No,
base,
no,
or
no.
tell me?
You're exactly right. A lot of these kids, if they didn't start with us in preschool, pre-K, have come from other experiences that weren't the right fit for them for a number of reasons. But a perfect example is a child whose passion is mathematics, right? Even love to read about mathematics. So in their former school, they had a math book in front of a manga book, right? So it looked like they were the cool kid reading the manga book, but really they were reading about math. And then when they got here, it was okay to read about math, right? That could be celebrated. Or a kid who's the origami queen or king here, or the Rubik's Cube solver, like that, where that might be not celebrated elsewhere. It might be seen as, like nerdy, and nerds rule the world. So, that's what we want to celebrate here. But we also have we have one amazing kid who's a rocket star, a rock star speed skater. So, and he's as, good at speed skating as he is at math and science. So we've got kids who just can find their talents and passions and run with them. We really love to help kids either take the talents and passions that they know about and make them stronger, or help them find these talents and passions and help them find avenues within which to explore them. And I feel like yes, of course we have a curriculum. Right? I don't want people to think that we don't have a curriculum. We look to the state standards. Our kids are doing really well. They're flying high above the state standards. But what we do here is we really focus on critical and creative thinking, which I think is lacking in a lot of educational spaces. And we are very open to hearing kids' questions. We want them to ask as many questions as possible, which is why our class sizes are small, because we want to give kids the space and the safe environment where they can ask these really thoughtful questions about the world. And
John,
then
is this,
some of them are
sorry,
doozy.
I wanted to ask John, I'm, what I think you're talking about, and maybe this isn't necessarily the way we think about it, but there's diversity at your school.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that really, that's one of the 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 parts of John's heart that beats really hard. So John, are you hearing diversity here?
I'm hearing diversity, and the way we like to look at it at Penn GSC is a continuum: diversity, belonging, inclusion, and equity.
Yes.
And it's the continuum. It's in a lot of ways an 8-year a path to really achieve equity. And equity gets thrown around a lot, and diversity and DEI gets thrown around a lot. But it is important to me to think about cultural inclusion and think about having equitable access, equitable experiences, and equitable outcomes in education. But Susan, as you're talking, I'm really thinking about other areas of research that we're doing here, and that's student-centered learning and meeting students where they are. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of research that says if you kind of take that as a core value, you're really going to develop an environment of engagement,
Mhm.
and an environment of, as I've read it, your infinite potential model,
Yes.
which I think is really, really interesting. Two of
Mhm.
the I's I took out of there was the interdisciplinary
Mhm.
and the impact that you strive to develop or instill in your students. And I love that. Very much a
Mhm.
value here at the University of Pennsylvania. Interdisciplinary. It's not just math, it's real
Right.
world problem solving.
Yes.
We're not learning math, we're doing math, right?
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
I
Mhm.
really love that, because I do think that's the future. We're starting to talk about portrait of a graduate. And for
Mhm.
so long, we've been talking about 21st century skills. And
Mhm.
now with this injection of AI and machine learning and
Mhm.
ChatGPT, we're
Yes.
starting to think about mid 21st century skill building
Right.
and
Mm.
what we're going to do to develop the portrait of a mid 21st century graduate. And it sounds like you're doing that at the
Yes.
Feynman School in terms of instilling those values. Tell us a little bit more about that model and those
Sure.
values that are coming out.
Yeah, so we sort of came up with this model called infinite I to the nth, but it's infinite potential, right? And one of our board members, who I think you would resonate with, is Dr. Eric Mazur at Harvard University. He is a physics professor, but
Never heard of Harvard, but
yeah,
I'm
right.
sure he's pretty
But
good.
he is kind of turning
Mm.
higher education on its head, and he does a lot of project based learning with his physics students. So he'll have the physics students build Rube Goldberg machines, and then he'll have them explain the physics behind the machine. So it's a lot of collaboration and teamwork. But so it's the first I is ideation. It's kind of thinking of the ideas, collaborating and thinking of the ideas, and then it's like you said, interdisciplinary. You're going to have to employ engineering and some mathematics and writing and presentation skills, communication skills. And then it's implementing your ideas. How are you going to do that? You're working together as part of a team. Well, you have to learn how to be part of a team. It doesn't come naturally for some people. It's a give and take. It's the being getting over the disappointment of people not choosing your idea. And then it's collaborating and picking and choosing different parts of people's ideas, which kids will say, well, you're copying me. No, 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 they're not
Mm.
copying your idea. We are collaborating and combining ideas, which is what engineers and scientists do on a daily basis. Um, and then the impact, turning their ideas into something tangible and impactful. How are you using your gifts and talents for the greater good? So it's always leaving the world a better place than they found it.
See, one of the things you started with introducing this, I think, is also fascinating as a head of school and as somebody who oversees the
Mhm.
culture. Is you were very quick to say we're still about competencies and we're still
Mhm.
about student success as it relates to aligning to standards and maybe
Mhm.
PARC, PISA, and Smarter Balance. And
Mhm.
I get that. But what I find is when you're teaching and you're institutionalizing those values, the standards alignment almost
Exactly.
take care of
Yes,
themselves.
that's right.
And
Mhm.
I really love this idea of real world problem solving.
Mhm.
Working together in teams to solve a real world problem and then being able to present it. And Susan, I have to say, other research we're doing here is this question of assessments, right? Whether it's formative or
Mhm.
summative assessments, and you hit on that. And that is, how do we relook at an assessment? When I
Mhm.
invite somebody into an interview here at the University of Pennsylvania, I don't care about their LSATs or the LSATs or their PARC scores.
Right.
Can they work on teams? Can they solve a real world problem? Are they great communicators? Are
Yes.
they creative in terms of their view on the world? And it sounds like those are being instilled there. And I have to say, we're looking at assessments this way. Sure, the time on task and the have you
Mhm.
completed formative assessments, multiple choice, and mastered the content? Yes. But what we're trying to look at is like digital portfolios. Are you able to
Mhm.
make something and be able to
Yes.
present it substantiated with evidence and growth mindset? You had hit on
Mhm.
that. Carol Dweck and that whole world of, is your mind open to learning new things?
Right.
Are you looking at things through an asset or a deficit lens? And I'm just
Mhm.
fascinated by how you're institutionalizing these things at the school and how that's turning out in terms of how students are developing.
I
But
mean, oh, go ahead, Josh.
no, what I wanted to point out, and this show is where we get to talk to people, and it probably has some therapy for all of us involved.
Totally.
Speaking and listening. And so, Susan, I wanted to push back, and you're just have a conversation. It's like, who is Feynman for?
Mm-hmm.
Like what the stuff that
Right.
the first of all, I wanted to point out, I love this. I'm going to show something here. She even did a little N for infinite. You know, so
I
when you're
saw that.
talking about infinite potential,
Mm-hmm.
which is fantastic, you know, if there's some parents that are hearing this, we want, I think I mean, you want them to feel comfortable that, come and talk to me, and,
Mm-hmm.
and let's see if this is a good fit. So how do
Right.
you, kind of take the infinite potential and make sure that it's still, a really comfortable approach, because you have little kids,
Yes.
little people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you overcome that, or think through that with us?
So you have to trust that children can learn a lot. They are just sponges, and so we don't water anything down. So, for instance, in our preschool pre-K classes here, they are learning about the human body, and the teachers are so masterful. They created this whole maze on the floor of the digestive system,
Hmm.
and the kids traveled through the digestive system. They're never going to forget that, right? So
Yeah.
just making the learning experiential for these little ones. And you definitely can. So what is our ideal student? So a kid who's just insatiably curious, never stops wondering why, asks big questions. Parents can't keep enough books in the house. They can't Google fast enough, right?
Hmm.
So they are showing maybe some kind of talent for either something mathematical. It doesn't mean that they can multiply and divide at age 3, but maybe a lot of their independent play has to do with math, or they're
Hmm.
noticing things in the world that have to do with numbers. And it's just a real fascination of theirs. Or they're really into words and books, or they have an advanced sense of humor. That's also a sign of a gifted learner. Or they gravitate towards older children because they're not in that baby stage anymore. And it doesn't mean that they sit behind a desk at Feynman School and they just do worksheets. We don't do
Yeah.
any worksheets with our little ones. It's all active play. And my motto is if their hand is on, their mind is on. So get them active, get them learning, and we carry that all the way through middle school. So our middle schoolers are constantly engineering things and working on rethinking. So the engineering design process, they make one iteration and then they talk about how it needs to be changed, and then they do another version. So the ideal kid here really is an out of box thinker. um, One of our English teachers just gave a logic problem that's on the Oxford entrance exam, and this one girl in 6th grade got it like in just a
Nice.
minute. And above all of the 7th graders, 8th graders, she just got it. So now we know something new about her, right? And now we're gonna give her more of those problems. So finding these
Feel it.
areas where these kids can shine is
Yeah.
really important.
John, does that hit home for you?
Well, it
Mhm.
sounds like there's a little Montessori here in
Mhm.
terms of tactile or kinesthetic learning, in terms of how you're taking pieces of different learning taxonomies and things
Mhm.
that we know are proven, but also injecting a little bit of Feynman secret sauce here.
Yes.
Just kind of some of your own instincts and some of your own institutionalized thinking based on your
Mhm.
learned experiences and some of your
Mhm.
training.
Right.
Here's a question though for you. In my experience, for an environment or a school that's built around excellence, inquiry, the infinite model, um, it takes a village, right? I'm interested in how you approach teachers. How do
Mhm.
Hmm.
you bring the right kind of teachers that are kind of feeling it in terms of the Feynman way?
Mhm.
How do you train them? How do you get them integrated into the culture?
Right.
And how do you put them in a position to shine as a stakeholder in this environment?
Well, we just had a professional development session right before this on teacher mindsets. And so we work on
Wow.
that all the time. So we are lifelong, we have a culture of lifelong learning here. And our teachers they were their students growing up.
Hmm.
That I can kind of get that in an interview with the questions that I ask. about their educational experiences. So either they had a great experience and they were their gifts and talents were fostered, or they have sort of a negative experience that they want to make better for their students. And really, and of course, with these gifts and talents come, like the anxiety or the perfectionism. And so they understand that in their students, but they also have that in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we are a very collaborative and supportive environment where we will help hold each other up. And so that's what I look for in teachers is just somebody who's, again, not going to come in and do the 8 to 4, but they're going to be thinking about how to move the school forward. And that's
Yeah.
really what I want. I want this not to be me, from the top down. I want us to be working as a team.
And she has done that. I mean, Feynman, we know, John, schools are also businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts from the top. And I've seen that Susan leads, and I've also seen that she has people on her team that that have come from great schools. Like the Georgetown days of the world. Not taking anything away from Georgetown Prep, but the Georgetown days of the world. And been there for decades, and then kind of learn how a school like that does it, and they bring their talents to Feynman. And then I've seen Susan kind of be like, hey, we have a way of doing things. But let's also understand like how you've done things,
Mm-hmm.
and how we can really lift up the whole community when it comes to. And I've seen this because I've talked to students, I've talked to parents, and I've talked to teachers. So truth be told, I've been studying this school, and so that's why I thought Susan would be a great guest for the show.
Let's talk about other stakeholders. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
great. Who are a child's first teacher? Their parents,
Right.
right?
Yes.
How do you
Yes.
how do you engage the community at large, and how are you almost in some cases have to teach parents
Yes.
how to be great advocates for their children without meddling and getting in the way of parenting?
Right. No, that actually just came up today is how do we listen more to the values that the parents have coming in, and what were their experiences with their children and why they're making the move to Feynman, or with their own childhood experiences and education experiences. So I think that the teachers do a lot of those brief in the hallway kind of conversations.
Mhm.
We try to have community events whereby the families get together. We have a family heritage day where a lot of the faculty actually come and participate. And that's where families get to know each other on a more personal level. And that really brings the community together. And just being out at Carline talking to parents, that's really important too. Just listening to what matters to them. I will take some families out for coffee just to check up on them, see how it's going. They know that I always meet with them whenever they want. I have an open door policy with my faculty, with my students, and with my parents. So I'm not
That's
I'm an atypical head. Like, I'm
that
always in the classroom. You're never going to really find me in my office. I'm always in the classroom. I want to help the teachers. I want to help the students. And I'm never too busy for teachers, parents, or students ever. Everything
that
drops when they have concerns.
that open door policy, she
Mhm.
100% means that. We were on a
Mhm.
call a couple days ago, and a student, I don't know how old he was,
Kindergarten.
but
Hmm.
kindergarten, could not find at the moment his Minions water bottle.
Hmm.
And I could hear Susan talking, and you would have thought that this kid lost $10,000 the way she was talking to him and listening to him. And I can
Hmm.
only imagine, the way you put it, that you were literally probably down on your knee,
Hmm.
talking to him eye to eye. We've got it.
Hmm.
And there's a happy ending to this story. By the way, the water bottle was like
In
exactly
his
where it was
cubby.
supposed to
Right.
be. Yeah.
Exactly.
Was St. Anthony involved in this conversation? Because at Georgetown Prep, we were pretty big on St. Anthony.
No,
That's so
Saint
funny.
Susan,
Right.
Saint Susan and her
There
staff.
you go.
Yeah. And speaking of Saint Susan, let's not make jokes here about this stuff. And in our pre-interview, Susan, I think one thing that really struck me, that you really emphasized, and I could feel it was coming from really from your heart, was some of the social action.
Hmm.
Your bake sale, the students. Uh, raising some money for Nepal earthquake victims.
Mhm.
Those are big things, and
Yeah.
those are important things.
Mhm.
But then you really even it's social action locally, and talk about your PE teacher.
Yeah, so last year, I watched the news. I was happy to be watching the news about a fire that took place at a townhouse in Gaithersburg, and then I get a text from my PE teacher that that was his family home. Luckily, nobody was hurt. They lost everything inside, but that really struck a chord in the kids. They adore this man. He's like this huge teddy bear of a man. They love him, and so they rallied around him. The students planned the bake sale, and in a week, raised $1,000 for him, which in our size school with preschool through eighth grade was just simply amazing. They ran the bake sale, they did the cash box, everything. I left it up to them, and they got to present him with the check, which was just such a great proud moment for our community, and really meant so much to our teacher that the children would do that. And that's what we want to instill in them is, our theme of the year is be curious and kind. I don't know how we're going to top it.
Yeah.
But that's what we really want them to understand is that they hear a lot of negativity. It surrounds them out in this world, but you can still be kind. Kindness can still win out. And that's what we want to remind them.
We're working with another curriculum provider called Choose to Be Nice. They're up
Oh, I
in
love that.
New England. I'd
Mhm.
love to put you in touch with Dina.
Excellent.
She's awesome. Been on Good Morning America talking about this crusade
Mhm.
of being nice.
Mhm.
It's interesting, Susan. I know we're going to run out of time, but I have my sort of checklist, and every check is kind of happening here on terms of the model school. It's like student centered,
Mhm.
being competency based, but also being open, built on inquiry. This interdisciplinary and impact, and now we've gotten into service based, engaging parents, engaging teachers, making sure that the entire culture is built around this inclusive model, which you've covered. I'm curious because we did a panel on it yesterday on creative learning spaces,
Mhm.
indoor outdoor education, the
Mhm.
importance of my son. For a while when we moved here to Philadelphia, went to Friends Select, and they
Mhm.
were incredible about getting the students out of the building and into museums. Franklin Institute, talk about
Oh,
walking through
yes.
a heart, right? And never
Yes.
forgetting that, going to the American Revolution Museum.
Mhm.
Tell us about creative learning spaces and how you think about sort of alternative forms of education, whether
Yeah.
that's indoor, outdoor, creative learning spaces, aftercare,
Mhm.
after school.
Yeah, so we go on field trips. Now they're ramping up again now that the pandemic is over.
Yeah.
We go to one right around the corner from us, which is a schoolhouse from the days of slavery, and
Wow.
there's the dunce cap, right? And they don't get like tapped with the ruler, but the ruler is there, and they're like, okay, like the fear is put in them, like that could have happened to you,
Wow.
and the kids just eat it up because they love to play the bad kid, right?
Mhm.
So we try to find field trips where they have those real world experiences. We try to go on many field trips during the year, but we also bring people into the school, which I think is really important. And we try to get our parent body to come in and open their eyes to fields of work that are here today. But we keep telling the kids, like, there are going to be careers that haven't even been born yet. You might create your own. So really what's important is the skills that you learn. So we'll bring people in to talk about. We just had an engineer from NIST come, and he brought his 3D scanner and he
Wow.
scanned the kids' arms. It was wild.
That's
So we like to
amazing.
give them those types of experiences. We had a graduate from my high school come who works for NASA, and she brought a replica of the Mars rover wheel that she had helped build.
Hmm.
Um, and so we want to show them real people, and instead of just us, in front of the class. But
That's amazing.
yeah, we take the middle schoolers to Chincoteague every year, and they go and they literally dive in the mud. It's so gross, but they love it. Of course, I wouldn't tell them that, right? It's the best thing ever,
The best thing. Yeah. Well, the Mars rover engineer is great. I was just
Yes.
talking to someone about the impact of Goodnight Oppie. If you know
Mhm.
that documentary, which tracks the 15 years of the Mars rover program, it's an amazing documentary. And I think the students who met that engineer should actually see that documentary
Yes,
because
yes.
it's an
Mhm.
interesting introduction. to the fact that we as a country were using artificial intelligence in 2003. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Oppie was almost, the Opportunity rover was almost a sentient being. At least
Mm-hmm.
it's characterized that way in the movie, and it's a very easy way to learn what artificial intelligence and machine learning is all about. That would be really, really interesting. We're talking about building some curriculum around that documentary.
And like at
Yeah.
Feynman School, we have this growth mindset. So that, everybody knows about Chat GBT, right?
Yeah.
It's here to stay. So now we've got a teacher who is thinking about how can it help me in the classroom? Because it literally is here to stay. So now we've got to pivot. Just like we pivoted during the pandemic beautifully, the kids didn't miss a beat. We have to pivot now and take on this new technology and see how it can work for us instead of assuming it's going to work against us.
Wow, that's a great way to kind of start summarizing, because we're talking a lot about that, and it gets back to that asset versus deficit lens. We like to think of ChatGPT and AI as being a way to turbocharge durable skills. So we can all get crazy about, oh my gosh, is this going to turn our students into robots, or is this going to facilitate plagiarism or cheating? But what if we know that so much is built around evidence, using evidence to substantiate an argument? What if you could use ChatGPT for your rough drafts and actually come up with a couple rough drafts, get the sources, and use that to create your final draft? Maybe that could speed up the process of learning. Maybe that could speed up the process of how you use evidence to substantiate an argument. So we're not thinking of ChatGPT as being this sort of menacing product,
Right.
as much as it can be a process to turbocharging student-centered, student-directed learning in creative ways. And I think it sounds like your teachers, and certainly the head of your school, is open to these changes as becoming opportunities to push us to that mid 21st century portrait of a graduate, which is super, super exciting.
I don't mean to interrupt here.
Sorry.
I'm certainly happy to listen.
I'm ready to move back to Potomac and put my son in finance school. How about that?
I believe it. I think it'd be a great school for your son. Great
Potomac
school
pizza, do you bring that in?
We
still?
do on Fridays.
Is it square like what we had?
No, it's regular shaped.
It's triangular.
Not Lido's, man.
Right.
It's not Lido's. They never cut corners. Lido's.
Sorry, I interrupted, Josh.
One last thing, and luckily we own these airwaves, so we can talk a little bit longer, but we can't say everything.
Right.
But I've been lucky enough to hear that Feynman has been at some great locations, and is moving to a different location for the next at least 5 years, and who knows beyond. It's actually a location that's very near and dear to my heart, in where I grew up, in outside of DC.
Stadium?
No, that wasn't around when I was growing up,
Right.
or else I would have been a Nats fan. But Susan, just without getting in trouble,
Yes.
can you talk a little about the new location?
Yes, I mean, we're so excited. We've loved the location that we're in now, but it has been missing some critical things for our creative and critical thinkers. So our new location is in Rockville. It has a lab space. It has a wonderful art room whose floor has, it looks like a Pollock painting, so we know we don't have to clean it. A wonderful classroom space, a theater, and a gymnasium, a rock climbing wall, vast fields, a new sports complex that has outdoor bathrooms. So we really think it's a step in the right direction for what our goals are and what we want to accomplish for our students. Really
for the long term.
For the long
term. I think what's interesting and important, and I can understand this from a parent perspective, is that families don't want to know, or hear that you're moving to this place for a year. I mean, we're talking 5 years at least, and who knows beyond.
Yes.
So congratulations on where you're moving to.
Yes.
And we're going to have to do some breaking news and follow up when we can announce that. I know that the pen is about to hit the
Yes,
paper.
it is. Yes. I got the latest version of the letter of intent today. So
it's awesome. It's really
Feynman
awesome.
School is taking over the White Flint Mall.
Oh, I wish. That'd be a great space.
It's not that far-fetched.
Right.
I don't want to go too deep into that.
I don't even know if that's
far-fetched.
still there. Do we still have malls?
We
No,
do.
White
We still
Flint
have
is
malls, but that one's not there.
Montgomery Mall made it. Lake Forest is out. White Flint is out.
Oh man, we could go on and on. That's great.
Yeah. No, this has been a great show and kind of again, I hope a cathartic experience for everybody, and like,
Mm-hmm.
how we found places to learn that really, resonated with us, each one of us on this show, and hopefully people that are listening. And I'm happy to know that there's a school out there, that other kids can find, in Feynman. And I graduated in 1997
Mm-hmm.
from high school, and they'll be looking back saying, you know
Yeah.
what, Feynman changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that day and to this day. And so, congratulations on building that, Susan.
Thank you.
And I'm fired up, not only to hear and learn more about Feynman, but to really interact and engage with a head who really gets it, who
Thank you.
really brings the life experiences that you had to your job. We like to, in working with our entrepreneurs, ask, are you running to the shower in the morning? Are you running to the shower saying, I've got this new great idea for my business? Or are you running and saying, I got to go to work? And you, Susan, sound like you're running to the shower and really looking to do new and pioneering things for the good of your students. And that's really awesome to hear. We hope you come up to the University of Pennsylvania and speak to our entrepreneurs and talk to some of our heads and principals, because
I love it.
this story needs to be told. And you really personify purpose-driven teaching and learning. So
Yeah,
thank you
thank
for what
you.
you do.
Thank you. A lot of people said I'd be out the door once my daughters graduated, but no, this is the life for me. I love it. I love the kids as if they were my own.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time.
Mm-hmm.
Happy opening day. Congratulations to you on an amazing school.
Thank
And
you.
we'll be here to support you. And I can see it in John's eye. He's going to track you down. You got a lot to talk about, so that's great.
Awesome. I can't wait. Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you, Susan. Take care.
Thanks for listening, Breakers.